Good afternoon, everyone. This video is particularly aimed at Year 9 students who have recently been studying life in Hitler's Germany. However, if you are in Year 10, you should also find this to be useful in helping you revise some of the topics that we covered last year. Now, you might be watching this because you've been asked to complete a specific piece of work on the frog. However, I will also suggest that you pause the video at certain times to complete some activities. Now, the notes that you make should help you to structure your knowledge and your understanding of the events. If you've got your books from school with you, then please feel free to do the notes in them. If you don't have them, then keeping them in a folder of your own at home is equally as good. I'm going to focus on one of the more disturbing aspects of Nazi Germany, and that is the persecution of the Jews between 1933 and 1945. Now, as we look at this, we want to focus on how the Nazi persecution of the Jews accelerated during this time. The Nazis established many new anti-Jewish laws. These were introduced slowly at first, so that the civilian population would not realise the extent of the Nazis' party's anti-Semitism. So, let's start in 1933. It was at this time, a matter of only a few weeks after Hitler was appointed Chancellor, that the regime established the first concentration camps, imprisoning its political opponents, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, many others classified as dangerous. Extensive propaganda was used to spread the Nazi Party's racist goals and ideals, and the Jews would be a particular target for these attacks. However, we want to focus on the decrees or the laws that were passed in the period up to 1937. From the moment the Nazis came to power, they started to roll out decrees that started to restrict and limit the rights of Jews in Germany. For example, in April 1933, the Nazis passed a law against the overcrowding in schools. This limited the number of Jewish students in a school to just 5% of the total. Not an outright ban, but significant enough to force large numbers of Jewish students to have quit their schools. Also, in 1933, books by Jewish authors were publicly burnt, whilst Jewish civil servants, lawyers, teachers were sacked. This persecution reached its peak when in 1935 the Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of German citizenship, outlawed marriage and sexual relations between Jews and Germans, and removed all the civil and political rights of the Jews. These laws were to be the foundation for much of the extreme persecution which took place later. Now, I'd like you to pause the video for a moment and take a look at the links from the description below. Try to find 5 examples of the type of laws that were passed by the Nazis before 1937. When you have your 5 examples written down, try and summarise the impact that these would have had on Jews in Germany. So, we'll now pick up the persecution of the Jews from 1938. More laws were passed that continued to remove the rights of the Jews. However, it was in 1938 that events took a much more severe turn. On the night of November 9th, 1938, Jewish homes, businesses and synagogues were attacked throughout Germany and Austria. Synagogues and Jewish businesses were burnt to the ground and the windows of Jewish shops were smashed. So much shattered glass lay in the street afterwards that the event became known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. The Nazis had used an attack on a German diplomat by a Jew in Paris to justify the retaliation. And Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, was particularly involved in Kristallnacht, as he ordered newspaper printers to publish widely the events in Paris. After the German diplomat had died, the attacks went national. Hitler ordered that the local Nazi forces were to attack Jewish businesses, but they were to wear plain clothes to do this. Hitler also instructed the police not to become involved in stopping the attacks. Now, in total, 400 synagogues were destroyed across Germany, and around 100 Jews were killed. After the events of Kristallnacht, the Jews were fined 1 billion Reichsmarks for instigating the violence and had to pay for any damage done to their own businesses. This was followed up by the rounding up of some 30,000 Jews and interning them in concentration camps. This event marked a gear change in the Nazis' policy towards the Jews. I'd like you to pause the video again and write your own summary of what happened on the night of November 9th, 1938. Try to include 4 specific details of the damage that was done on Kristallnacht. You should also explain how these events were different from the 5 examples you recorded from between 1933 to 1937. Finally, we need to consider the period from 1938 to the end of the war in 1945. After the outbreak of World War II in 1939, the Nazis stepped up the persecution of the Jewish people. The Nazis invaded Poland in 1939 after they signed the Nazi-Soviet pact with Stalin. There, they herded Jews into overcrowded ghettos in places such as Warsaw. In 1941, following the invasion of the Soviet Union, Nazi death squads called Einsatzgruppen murdered more than 1 million Jewish people in Eastern Europe. However, in January 1942, a meeting took place in Berlin where the first plans were made to begin the final solution, the mass murder of all Jews in Europe. They were to be systematically taken to camps such as Auschwitz and gassed. Nobody knows how many Jewish people died during the Holocaust, but the usual figure given is 6 million. This is the final time that I'd like you to pause the video and make your own notes of the events between 1938 and 1945. The best way to develop your understanding of the period is to compare the events from this late period with those from the first 3 years after 1933. That way you can really see the changes that took place. So let's review the period we've looked at. After 1933, there was a constant flow of laws that were clearly anti-Semitic. These reached their peak in the 1930s with the passing of the Nuremberg laws, which took away the rights of citizenship from the Jews. Such laws would clearly be unacceptable today. However, they still paled in comparison with the events of Kristallnacht and the violence that would follow 1938, culminating in the final solution. Well, why didn't the Nazis start with such violence after Hitler rose to power in 1933? They recognise that many Germans would have been shocked by such actions had they occurred so early in Hitler's Germany. Instead, a campaign of indoctrination was carried out, coupled with the ruthlessly efficient terror system, so that by 1938, many had been persuaded to accept the most extreme of Nazi actions. It's also interesting to note that Nazi persecution appears to relax somewhat during 1936. It's important to remember that this was the year of the Berlin Olympics, a huge propaganda spectacle organised by Goebbels, which saw visitors from around the world flock to Germany. And the Nazis were wary of appearing to be hostile in front of an international audience, and so they made a conscious effort to tone down their anti-Semitic behaviour, to hide it. They even went so far as to include one Jewish athlete, Helene Meyer, so that they could dismiss claims of prejudice against the Jews. Now, in the next video, I will look at how you might be examined on this period, and how you could write a high-level historical explanation of these events. Till then, bye-bye.